I got a message recently. Someone who is about 5 years from retirement, a thoughtful person, someone who's clearly been thinking about this. They wanted to connect, but mentioned they thought they should probably wait until retirement. Wait until they were actually retired before doing anything. So I want to talk about that because I hear it all the time. And I think it could be one of the most expensive assumptions someone makes on the road to retirement. Not because the math is dramatically different, but because of something that most financial content doesn't talk about. The relationship, the trust, the years of knowing someone before needing to lean on them for one of the biggest transitions of your life. So today, I want to make the case for why starting before retirement is almost always better than waiting, and why the timing matters more than most people realize. My name is Ethan Ho, certified financial planner and the founder of Claw Capital Partners here in Hawaii. I've spent over a decade doing financial planning for people who are navigating major life transitions here on the island. Retirement planning is at the center of a lot of that work. And what I keep seeing is that the people who retire well almost never start planning at retirement. They started before, oftentimes years before. If you want real financial content built for people who want real financial peace and security, hit subscribe and follow along. All right, let's get into it. Here's why most people assume that they should wait. They think the main job of a financial advisor is asset management, moving accounts, running the portfolio, managing investments. And because most employer plans cannot be moved until you separate from service, the logic becomes, let's wait, there's nothing we can do yet. Wait until the accounts can move and then hire someone. That logic is not wrong exactly, it's just incomplete. Because asset management is just one part of what a good advisor does. Planning is the other part, and I believe planning is where most of the value lives, after the decisions are made. Here's the critical difference. Asset management happens after the decisions are made, and planning happens before. The decisions that determine how well you retire are almost always made in the years before retirement, not in the months after. Waiting for retirement to start planning is like training for a marathon a week before the race. The race is not where you prepare, it's where you perform. Can I tell you what I think is actually the most valuable reason to work with an advisor before retirement? It's not a tax strategy, it's not a specific account structure, it's trust. Retirement is one of the biggest transitions of your entire life. You're moving from decades of earning and building to a chapter where the paycheck stops and the spending begins. That transition is financially complex, but it is also emotionally complex. And navigating it with someone who already knows you is fundamentally different than navigating it with someone you've just met. I want you to think about what it actually means to work with an advisor that you trust deeply. They already know your full financial picture, your fears, your spending patterns, your family dynamics, your relationship with money, the things that keep you up at night. They have been in the room with you through multiple conversations, they've seen how you make decisions, and they know what matters most to you. That context changes the advice. Not because the advisor is smarter, but because context matters enormously in financial planning. The right answer for you specifically requires knowing you specifically, and that takes time to build. You can't compress it into 6 months or manufacture it under pressure, and yet that is exactly what people ask of themselves when they wait until retirement to find an advisor. High stakes, time pressure, literally everything on the line, and a stranger sitting across from you at the table. That is not the best version of this conversation. There is one more piece of this almost nobody talks about. Going from earning and saving to spending down assets is one of the hardest psychological transitions in personal finance. You've spent decades building, watching the number go up, finding security and identity in accumulation. And then suddenly, the plan requires you to spend it. And for many people, that feels deeply uncomfortable, even when the math says that you can afford to. Having an advisor who's been walking alongside you, who you trust, who knows your situation inside and out, makes that transition much easier. Not because they manage the math differently, but because you trust their guidance when the fear kicks in, and the fear almost always kicks in. Let me show you what this looks like through 2 real situations. The first is someone who I started working with who was about 12 months from retirement. They were planning on retiring this year, but the picture is complicated. They're building an addition to their home for their children. They need to refinance. They have real estate that should probably be sold based on everything that they've described to me. And all of these decisions are intersecting with their retirement timing at the same moment. It's a lot of moving parts all colliding at once. And the truth is, I think a lot of this would be much easier to navigate if we just started 5 years earlier. Not because the decisions would be necessarily different, but because we had time to think through each one carefully, to have that real estate conversation without a retirement deadline attached to it, to build a relationship before the pressure arrived. Instead, these are big decisions being made in a compressed time frame while the relationship is still developing. That's not a disaster, but it's harder than it needs to be. Now contrast that with another client I've worked with. They are financially retired. They could stop working tomorrow and never have to worry about money again. They choose to work because they enjoy it, not because they have to. They travel the globe when they want. Small purchases don't even register as decisions. They sleep well at night because every major threat has been addressed. They rate their enjoyment of life a 10 out of 10. When the time comes to fully stop working, that transition is going to be easy. Not because the math is perfect, but because we've been planning together for over a decade. The relationship is deep, the trust is real, and the plan's already laid out. They're not going to arrive at retirement and figure it out. They already have. Let me make this concrete. Here are the decisions and conversations that get meaningfully better when there's time to think about them and not a deadline forcing them. Catch-up contributions. Once you turn 50, you can contribute a significant amount more to your retirement accounts each year. Most people either do not know this or do not take full advantage of that window. A few years of maximized catch-up contributions can meaningfully change your retirement picture, but you have to start early enough to use it. Account consolidation done right. Old retirement accounts from previous employers need to be handled carefully, especially in Hawaii. Rolling everything into one account without thinking through the employer versus employee separation can cost you a state tax exemption that follows you through every distribution in retirement. That decision takes time to do correctly and shouldn't be done in a rush. Building the right cash reserve. Arriving at retirement with the right liquidity is not automatic. It requires deliberate planning years before. The right amount in the right place allows you to stay invested during volatility and allows you to avoid debt when life happens. Health insurance, life insurance, disability coverage, many of these come through your employer, and when you retire, they disappear. Most people have no real sense of what those benefits cost to replace and what they're actually losing when they're gone. That conversation needs to happen before retirement, not the week after. And long-term care planning, it belongs here too. In Hawaii, long-term care costs are among the highest in the nation. So a care event without a plan can derail an otherwise solid retirement. And the window to address it closes as health changes. Earlier is almost always better. Real estate clarity. Sell, keep, rent, simplify. These are decisions that need to be thought through well, and made in a rush, they often become the regret story years later. And in Hawaii, where property values are significant and the decision carries real financial weight, this deserves a careful, unhurried conversation. Social Security timing. Most people treat this as a simple age decision, but it's not. The strategy on when to claim and then what you draw from in the meantime can meaningfully change your retirement outcome. And maybe most importantly, clarity on what retirement actually means for you. Where are you living? What does your day look like? Are you managing property or simplifying? Are you staying close to family or traveling? These are not financial questions, but they drive every financial decision. And you cannot build the right plan without the answers. And the answers almost always get clear when there's time to sit with them, not when there's a deadline attached. One thing we're saying specifically about retiring in Hawaii, I think every one of these decisions carries almost more weight here than anywhere else in the entire country. The state tax complexity around retirement accounts, the cost of replacing employer benefits, the real estate decisions given what property is worth here, the long-term care exposure given Hawaii's costs. Getting these right matters more in Hawaii, not less. Which means starting earlier makes even more sense here than starting on the mainland. Now, not everybody needs an advisor 5 years before retirement. If your situation is genuinely simple, pension, social security, a paid off home, nothing too complex to navigate, you might get most of the value from a one-time consultation, not an ongoing relationship. But if you have meaningful assets, a real decision to make, and a retirement with moving parts, the case for starting before retirement is almost always stronger than waiting. Not because your advisor manages your money better, but because you deserve to navigate one of the biggest transitions of your entire life with somebody who already knows you, not somebody that you just met. Here's what I want to leave you with. If you are 5 years from retirement or even 10 years from retirement and you've been thinking about hiring an advisor but telling yourself to wait, you do not need to wait. The best financial advisor is not just someone who manages your money well. It is someone who knows you well enough to give you advice that actually fits your life. That kind of relationship takes time to build. The planning work that happens in the years before retirement is some of the most valuable work that you will do financially. And arriving at retirement with an advisor who already knows your picture is one of the strongest financial positions you can be in. The best time to start was 5 years ago. The next best time to start is today. If you found this useful, hit subscribe. I keep putting out practical Hawaii-specific financial planning content, and I would like to make sure you see it. And if you are approaching retirement and want to have a real conversation about where you stand and what the next chapter should look like, that is exactly what we do at Claw Capital Partners. Head to clawcapitalpartners.com, linked in the description, schedule a discovery call, and I'll see you in the next one.